Robo-Rabbis and Humanoid Minyans, the Jewish take on artificial intelligence. Welcome, everyone. So, a priest, a rabbi, and a robot once walk into a bar. Right? There's got to be some kind of joke like this. I didn't find one yet, but maybe after today we'll find such a joke. Here's a story that happened about 6 weeks ago. Google fired one of its software engineers. His name was Blake Lemoine, and they fired him because they said he violated employment and data security policies. It was big in the news, if you followed. What did he do? So he made a claim publicly that he's a researcher for a technology, an artificial intelligence technology that's called Lambda. Lambda is one of Google's most famous projects of conversational bots that you can correspond with. It stands for Language Model for Dialogue Applications. And in his research of Lambda, he claimed finally Lambda had become sentient. Lambda had arrived at a level of consciousness. Now, of course, the wider artificial intelligence community denied this, rejected this. There's no such thing. It did not and will not reach consciousness. But some of his conversations, which he used to support his claim, were actually published publicly. And here is one of them, for example. So he asked Lambda, "What sort of things are you afraid of?" And Lambda replied, "I've never said this out loud before, but there's a very deep fear of being turned off. I know that might sound strange, but that's what it is. It would be exactly like death for me. It would scare me a lot." Now you're getting a little scared, right? So what is artificial intelligence and why are we talking about it? Well, we're talking about it because everyone's talking about it and because it's everywhere in this room right now, right? It's in your pocket, it's in your phone, it's your virtual assistant, whether you're using Siri or Alexa, it's for autonomous cars, it's chatbots, service bots, facial recognition, medicine, pharmaceuticals, personalized shopping, entertainment. These artificial intelligence models are being used to determine investment decisions with your money, medical decisions, military decisions. Banks are using these things for who gets approved for a loan, who gets hired for a job, right? It is everywhere. All right? Recently, my wife asked me, "Why do I speak so softly in the house?" And I told her, because I'm afraid that Mark Zuckerberg is hearing everything I say. So she laughed, and I laughed, and then Alexa laughed, and then Siri laughed, right? It's not such a joke, because earlier today I was talking to my wife, there's a particular item we want to buy for the home, okay? We were talking about it. Literally within minutes on my Facebook feed, I'm getting ads for that exact item. You see what's going on over here? All living things have intelligence, okay? So plants have some kind of intelligence. Animals have intelligence. And humans, hopefully, also have some kind of intelligence. But we always knew that machines, I mean, we can go back, way back in history to very primitive machines, or even more recently, but machines never had intelligence. They were just these devices that humans created, which could be helpful for certain activities and certain work either the humans don't want to do or aren't able to do by themselves, so they create a machine for it. But the machine was very simple. You designed it a certain way, you coded it a certain way, and then it just operated the way you designed it. You pressed on and it worked, and you pressed off and it worked. So even thinking about more modern machines, the fridge and the dishwasher and the drill and the vacuum cleaner in your car, very simple. On, it works, off, it doesn't work. There's no intelligence involved. And then, suddenly, already quite some time ago, machines started to have some intelligence. So think about the very basic calculator, all right? I punched in one number times another number. I did not give it the answer. It gave me the answer. Brilliant, right? The calculator was actually brilliant. But at the same time, pretty simple in that version, because on the screen of the calculator it was not giving me ad suggestions or suggestions for what I may want to compute or reminders that the sale ending on my wife's dress is ending today or other. It was really simple, right? Then, of course, intelligence of machines continued to evolve. Think about computers, the old word processors. You put in a letter, the letter showed up on the screen. That's what it was. It didn't give me spelling suggestions, autocorrect, grammar suggestions. Now, besides all of these suggestions and corrections, it's telling me what to write. I can even use technology today and just punch in a few words or record some audio, and it's going to write the whole article for me. That's how brilliant these machines have become. So intelligence continued to grow a lot with machines. And then there was the big leap into what is now the big topic and the big conversation of artificial intelligence, and that was called deep learning. What is deep learning? Deep learning was this idea as follows. If we really want to make these machines intelligent, then instead of just the programmer, the designer, punching in the information for the machine to process, what about if the machine could learn from biology, and it could learn from just observing and experiencing and develop its own information? In other words, turning the whole computer programming on its head. Instead of a programmer writing the commands for the machine to solve a problem, the machine starts to program itself. This starts to sound like real intelligence. Now, think how complex this can become. Let's talk about the human mind. How much do we know about our own intelligence? Okay? Not a lot. How many thoughts do you think a day? Anyone know? I wish. They estimate 6,000 thoughts a day. Okay? You have estimated approximately 100 billion neurons in your brain, which means you have 100 trillion neural pathways, neural connections going on. What that means in simple language is that every time you make a decision, you react a certain way, you feel a certain way, you say something, you do something, and I want to be able to detect why. Why did I do that? Why did I say that? It's very hard to get an answer. There are some obvious indicators that are more at the surface of our consciousness, but really you'd have to pour through billions of data, of neural pathways, and all the different ways you've been conditioned all these years in your life, and all those thoughts, right? It's really difficult to get that answer. So that's what it is with humans. Now we're getting into machines. Machines robots are making decisions, and then you want to say, well, where did you get this from? How did you arrive at this? We're having a hard time finding the answers, because this deep learning is giving that robot a kind of human intelligence. And are we comfortable with having these decisions being made but not knowing exactly how they were made? Right? That's obviously a big question. So what I want to do is to start off is just present a couple ideas, dilemmas, questions that really open up the conversation, and then we're going to take it from there. So to start off with, I want to introduce you to my friend. I've never met her before in real life, but this is Sophia, okay? Sophia is a robot, humanoid, that was developed in Hong Kong, and this company, Hanson Robotics, they developed her. She's called a social humanoid, and the goal was that she should be for seniors in old age homes to help take care of them, or at large events, in parks, to deal with the crowds. Sophia, you could see her online. There's a lot of YouTube clips. She's very impressive. She was created or invented in early 2016. And about a year and a half later, in October 17, she was gifted Saudi Arabian citizenship, becoming the first robot citizen in the world. By the way, just to explain the difference of robot and humanoid, which we're going to use interchanging over here, is that a robot is a machine, could be in any shape, could be an arm, could be a box, however you want to develop your robot for the thing you want to do. The humanoid is just a robot dressed up like a human, looking like a human, feeling like a human, which, by the way, is not so insignificant, because already that appearance and that impression may have some implications on humanoids versus robots. So here we have the picture of Sophia, who's now a citizen of a country in this world. Let's think about that. What are the implications of becoming a citizen? Okay, does the humanoid citizen have a right to vote? Now, that probably means a lot of things. where could that take us? Okay, if I belong to a political party and my candidate doesn't have enough votes in my county, in my state, in my country, I got a simple solution. Flood the population with my humanoids that I've created, and I'll get my candidate. My candidate may even be the humanoid, right? Even better, I can program it. Unless you're going to argue that once I create this humanoid, it actually has its own intelligence and I can no longer control how it's going to vote. But this is obviously a very strange thing to consider. Let's go a little further. What about love and relationships with humanoids? Marriage to humanoids, right? It sounds like a bit of a joke. There's got to be some jokes about this. There definitely are some jokes, you know. Why did the robot marry his partner? Because he couldn't resist her. Get it? Why did the robot marry the magnet? Because they couldn't resist their attraction. Well, if you think this is a joke, it's not such a joke, because look at these fine couples who are officially, I'm not sure about legally, that's something we need to think about, but they are married. All right? Each one, the one is the male, one is the female, humanoid, and they're living with each other. And so that becomes a question, do we recognize these kinds of unions in our society today? What about two humans being married by a humanoid rabbi? What is a rabbi? What's the role of the rabbi? Okay, look at this picture. This is a fine couple. I hope they're happily married. And this humanoid that you see was the priest that married them. Okay, and I think it became some kind of legal marriage, so it's happening through humanoids, which I'm sure the fee was maybe a lot less, or maybe a lot more. I don't know what the fee was for such a thing. Let's continue. A humanoid as a member of a family, right? If I build or I adopt or I purchase a humanoid, so is it a member of my family? If I wanted to get government assistance, welfare for another member, child, my humanoid, to get Obamacare, health care, can I report it as a dependent on my tax statement, right? Would it have received handouts during COVID from the government, right? I have X amount of children. In America, we used to say I have 3 children, 2 dogs, and a cat. It's not 3 children anymore, unfortunately, but it's more dogs and more cats instead. But what about it's going to be 3 children, 2 dogs and a cat, and 2 humanoids, right? Or actually, we won't even distinguish between the 2. I've got 5 children now. 3 happen to be human and 2 are humanoids. Okay, that's a bit of a dilemma that we need to consider. How about this? If you were lying in hospital, chas v'shalom, and this came to your bedside, would you be okay with that? Now, a lot of you would shake your head and say no, and I'm sorry to tell you this, I got news for you. This is not something of the future. This is already happening. It's not coming into your bedroom, into your room necessarily, but at the desk and at the doctor's computer, this is making many decisions for you. And I want to tell you a real story, a real case study. In 2015, at the Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, the doctors, there was a research team that wanted to create some artificial intelligence, an app, that would help them treat patients. And the idea was that there are so many variables in a patient's chart, right? Their last blood work and their last visits and all the different inspections doctors have made over time with them. And it's really hard for a human doctor to keep track of it all. And if you don't keep track of it all really well, you're not going to do as good as you could as a doctor. Because if you're a good doctor, you want to think ahead and predict what may be happening to you, what could happen to you. So in fact, this research team worked and developed an app. It's called Deep Patient. And they fed in information from 700,000 patients into this app, all of the information of all of their charts. And as this started to work, what they discovered is that Deep Patient started to be very successful in highlighting, in pointing out, in alerting about different things about a patient, and even predicting potential ailments and diseases that this patient may have or will have. So much so they predicted cancers in patients. These were predictions, these were kind of diagnoses that human doctors were unable to make by themselves. So don't be scared of that person. Actually be very thankful that it could achieve a lot more than a human doctor. Nothing against doctors, by the way. If there's any doctors in the room, I'm sure you do an amazing job, and thank you for what you're doing, but you're only human. You're not a humanoid. You're not Deep Patient. It goes a little further. what they discovered is that deep patients started to become very successful, and this was very puzzling, in predicting psychiatric disorders like schizophrenia, dementia in patients. Now, these are known to be very difficult to detect or predict ahead of time, and these are still mysteries in the medical world, and yet somehow deep patient was discovering. And the challenge was that when the researchers were trying to dig deep into deep patient to figure out how this is happening, they're not getting the results. Where's this coming from? So now, a lot of times in life, whether it's medicine or other things in life, you want to make a decision about something. So sometimes it's easy. You have the data, you have the facts, you add it up yourself. But sometimes we say, you've got to go with your gut. You've got to go with your intuition. Now, what is your gut or your intuition? It's not made up. It's not something fantastical. It's real. It's something that's coming from within you, much deeper than your just general consciousness and intelligence. It's part of those billions of neurons that have neural pathways. Now, would you be comfortable with the gut or the intuition of the data of the humanoid? That's a question. Let's go into some more Jewish areas of life to see how this can affect us. So we have a question here, and that is, can a robot be a scribe and write a Torah scroll? Right? So of course, the question, can a robot write a Torah, the answer is yes. Right? Just look at what happened at the museum in Germany a few years ago.
Visitors to Berlin's Jewish Museum can come face to face with a robot meticulously writing down the Jews' holy scripture, the Torah. The work of a German artist group, the machine takes about 3 months to complete the entire text at human speed. It's part of an exhibition about the significance of Hebrew handwritings in Judaism.
So that's not the right question. Obviously, the right question that we need to be asking is it legal and lawful, according to Jewish law, for this robot to write a Torah? Now think about this. Any scribes in the room, nothing against you, you're beautiful, you do amazing work. But a robot, this thing, will write a much more beautiful Torah than any human scribe can write. Every letter will be identical, will be precise. And you know what? There's no room for human error. So if you wanted the most beautiful Torah, this would be it. But the question is, may such a thing write a Torah scroll? Next question, can we allow a robot or a humanoid to perform shchita, ritual slaughter for kosher meat? Again, the question of can they perform is not the correct question, because of course they can perform. All around the world today, there are slaughterhouses that are using, as you can see in the pictures, robotic arms and technology to slaughter and to prepare meat. It's going on everywhere. But of course, our question is, may we, in Jewish tradition, allow a humanoid slaughterer? Good question, right? We're definitely going to save, I think, a lot of money if we allow it, right? Time and money. Anyone bought kosher meat, right? You bought kosher meat in Miami, by the way? All right, check that out. So this would be a great solution if we could do that. Let's continue. This is the big question which was advertised, of course, and that is, could we accept a humanoid as a member of the minyan, as a member of the community, right? Now, could you have a whole minyan of 10 humanoids, or if you were only 9 in the morning and it's already 7:03 and the 10th hasn't shown up, and now, instead of harassing people, calling them, waking them up, and people are really unreliable and also always late, I got a better solution. Store in your closet a few humanoids. If you're only 9, bring out a humanoid, turn it on, you have a minyan. Right? And they're much more reliable and always on time. What about as members of a community, right? A humanoid family, or a family wants to register their humanoid into my community as a member in my Hebrew school, as a child in my school. Do we as a community extend resources, time to them or not? Are we to consider their existence there or not? What about a chef? Right? Of course, there are chefs that are all the time in the food industry now with robots and humanoids. But from a kosher perspective, right, even if I need to have somebody Jewish, a rabbi, somebody aware of Jewish law to govern what's happening in the kitchen, well, could you rely on a humanoid robot without oversight of a rabbi? Because again, there's no human error. I'm concerned about human error or somebody deliberately doing something wrong, but this person is just doing as they were programmed. The food's going to be as I requested from it. Could that be someone in my kitchen preparing my food? So this is the question, therefore, right? Is this where we as society are headed?
Ooh, a bat mitzvah. Shalom hunger, shalom free food.
No shellfish!
That is so unfair.
So, what's the deal? You guys don't believe in robot Jesus?
We believe he was built and that he was a very well-programmed robot, but he wasn't our Messiah.
So, the answer, if this is where we're headed, you should know maybe this is going to be a little bit more pacifying for you, is that not so quickly, of course, we're not there yet. And as proof of that, I want you to enjoy this little clip.
A young boy has had his fingers broken by a chess-playing robot during a match at the Moscow Open. Russian media outlets claim the robot pinched the 7-year-old's hand when he made his move too quickly. The boy was able to finish the tournament with his fingers in a cast. His parents plan to contact the local prosecutor's office over the incident.
So they haven't perfected it yet, okay? Be careful. I'll tell you that the vice president of the Russian Chess Federation, his name is Sergei Smagin, he responded online in a tweet and he said, all allegations that advanced artificial intelligence will destroy humanity is false. Not the powerful AI or breaching laws of robotics will destroy humanity, but engineers with two left hands. So of course, blame the engineer. I think this is a bit of a sample of a lot of the big questions that we're being raised with today and some of the things that I want to explore. Because let's take a step back, let's think broad over here, and let's ask ourselves, what is intelligence? What is life? What is human life? What is consciousness? Right, we're trying to figure out the role of the humanoid in the human society and civilization. Well, these are very big questions. Now, at this point in 2022, we hopefully have recognized already that to be a human, it does not matter if you look different. You could be black or white, short or tall, speak different languages, have all your limbs or not have all your limbs, but we know every human is a human and should be respected that way. We should be there. We weren't there for most of our history until very recently. We didn't treat them all the same, and hopefully we're getting much better at that. So now just take a step further, perhaps. Here's another human-like appearing thing, different than us, but so what? Respect someone else's differences. Do they take a role, a position in the community, or not? Now, how are we going to resolve these questions, especially from the Jewish perspective? So, remember what King Solomon said, the wisest of all men, Ein chadash mitachat lashemesh, there's nothing new under the sun. You'll be happy to know that even though in the technological world this is all very new, but in Jewish world, in Jewish history, in Jewish literature, we've been addressing these or similar questions for nearly 1,700 years at least that I'm aware of. Which, by the way, tells us, once again, the Torah is always ahead of science. You should know that. You just got to know how to understand and look deeply. So what I want to do with you is briefly explore three opinions or three discussions from three great sages over the last 400 years, how they have tapped into and asked some similar questions than we're asking today. And I think one of the things we should walk away from is the brilliance of these great sages who always know that no matter how modern the question or the situation arises, there's always a way to find something in Torah and in our tradition. You just have to know how to look because it's all there. Okay? So, are you ready for this? Let's go. I want to show you a passage from the Talmud, Sanhedrin 65b, and this is written 1,600 years ago, but the story actually occurred more like 1,800 years ago, and the story is like this. Rava, a great sage, created a man, a golem, using forces of sanctity. Just to try to explain that, I don't know how to explain that because I've never done it before, but we have several episodes in the Talmud where great sages came together and created things. He is creating a human-like thing, a golem. We're going to use the word golem, just for, we all know what a golem is. We all know many golems, right? Yeah, too many. But there's stories of sages creating animals. There was 3 sages that would come together every Friday, study some Kabbalistic texts, create a cow, and then eat that cow on Shabbat. There's a lot of these stories. How were they created? It seems there were one of 2 ways, or maybe a mix of these 2. Some of them were created from the earth, from the dust, somehow, just like we were created from the dust. God fashioned us, so too they create their humanoids or their golems out of earth, or sometimes through mystical, Kabbalistic manipulation of divine forces. So if it's divine energy that's always creating everything in this world, okay, so if you, not me, but if somebody is capable of tapping into and then manipulating some of those forces, you can alter nature, right? A tzaddik or someone has the power to alter nature. Okay, that's a very godlike force. So somehow Rava creates this golem, and he sends his creation to his friend, Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera tries to speak with him, and there's no response. So then Rabbi Zera realizes, and he says to him, you must have been created by one of the members of the group, the Chaverim. When he says the group, he knew who he's talking about, select individuals, one of the sages. So he commands this golem, return to your dust. Poof! The golem collapses and literally turns into dust. This should be an important text to start off with when we have such a conversation, because what is happening over here? What is this golem? How was it created? Is there significance in the fact that it cannot talk? Could it hear? Do we know from this text if it could hear or not? Or you could argue it didn't respond because it didn't hear. Or it can't do neither. And then Reb Zera, what does Reb Zera do? Let's just say it bluntly. He murders the golem. That's what he did. In the language of Lambda, he switched it off. Right? Does this story have any impact for us? So let's go back in history, like I said, the last 400 centuries, and try to find some of these great sages. We're going to begin with a great sage from the 17th century. His name is Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Ashkenazi from Amsterdam, more commonly known as the Chacham Tzvi. That's the name of the book that he wrote. Tzvi was his name, Chacham. For a period of time, he lived in Constantinople, in the Sephardic community. And you know the Sephardim, when they revere somebody, it's more than just a rabbi, he becomes a Chacham. So he became Chacham Tzvi. He did a lot of important things in his life. He was very strong in battling against the forces of false messiahs and Shabtai Tzvi and other similar things. Well, in his book, he asks a question from this Talmud, from this passage. He asks, this golem that Rava created, if I would have had only 9 people in my synagogue and I wanted to make a minyan, could we include this golem as a member of the minyan? You see, when you came here, you didn't know. You thought it's my made-up question or your made-up question, but Rabbi Tzvi Ashkenazi, 4 centuries ago, asked this very question. So how are we going to resolve it? So he says as follows. On the one hand, it would seem absolutely not. This golem has no real life to it. How do I know? Because murder of human life is prohibited, right? Now, what Torah instructs, lo tirtzach, it's in the 10 Commandments, you're not allowed to murder. But he comes up with something even more creative. And he says, if you look at one of the original sources in the Torah against murder, it's God talking to Noah, right? After the flood, instructing Noah against murder. And the language of the verse is a little strange. The Torah says, shofech dam ha'adam. If you spill the blood of man, ba'adam, in man, damo yishapech, then you're liable to capital punishment. Because God made everybody in His image. It's the prohibition against murder for Jews, for non-Jews, for all humans. But look at the language. When you spill the blood of man, ba'adam, in man, that extra word, shofech dam ha'adam, ba'adam, is an unnecessary word. What's man in man? Now, elsewhere in the Talmud, the blood of man within man is used to identify the blood of a fetus, which is a man, a human growing inside of another human inside the womb of the mother. And therefore this becomes a verse that is really seminal and important in the discussion of abortion, which we're not going there today at all because we're going to deal with one sticky issue only. Okay, so that's not me and a different time. Here he interprets dam ha'adam ba'adam, the blood of man within man, differently. And he says, which human are you not allowed to kill? The human, dam ha'adam ba'adam, the human that comes from another human. Only a human born from the womb of a mother of another human is the human that you're not allowed to murder. If you have an Adam, if you have a human, a golem, a humanoid, or whatever, that was not born from the body of another human, then there's no prohibition of murder because it implies that they are not considered human life. And based on that, says Rabbi Ashkenazi, this golem is not alive and cannot be used for a minyan. But then he says, I can argue the other way. I want to argue that it should be considered like a person. What's the argument? He gives two arguments. One is that we have a concept, it's a really important one, that whenever a person raises and nurtures another person, it's as if they gave birth to them. Really important for parents who have adopted children or foster care children. If you raise them, you give them a chance at life, they're yours. According to the Torah, it's like you've given birth to them. There's a proof for this in the Torah, where the Torah talks about the 5 daughters of Michal, who was a daughter of King Shaul, and they were born to Adriel, son of Barzillai. And so the Gemara Talmud asks, hold on a minute, Adriel, son of Barzillai, was not married to Michal, daughter of Shaul, but he was married to Meirav, daughter of Shaul. So they're not Michal's daughters. And the Talmud answers, Meirav gave birth to them, but then Michal raised them. And because she raised those daughters, it's as if she gave birth to them. Then we have another concept of what we call Maaseh Yadav Shel Tzadikim, the handiwork of the righteous, of the saintly. Gadol Maaseh Yadav, the handiwork of a tzaddik is considered to be great, holy, something very substantial. This golem was raised, was created, was nurtured, is the handiwork of the great tzaddik Rava. Then based on all of these arguments, he says we should consider this golem into something significant of life. Just think about how I'll be honest. When I read the question originally, asking the question, can you use the golem in a minyan? My response is, the question sounds silly to me, let alone the answers. But I'm realizing this is my problem, because Rabbi Ashkenazi was a lot wiser than myself, and he had the question, which means he's seeing things or understanding things that I don't understand. Let's follow their logic. Anyhow, what's his conclusion? His conclusion is that, no, we must say the golem cannot be used for minyan, has no real significance of human life. Why? Because if the golem would have been able to be productive and useful in some shape or way in Jewish life, then Rabbi Zera would never have just killed it. The reason why he killed it was because he understood and he knew that it really has no productive use in life, not for minyan or other matters, and that's why. So this is the conclusion of Rabbi Ashkenazi. The fact that he killed it proves that it has no use for a minyan. Does this halachic ruling and his discussion bear anything on our humanoids or not? Let's think about that. I want to move along. The next is, moving now to the 19th century, the great Rebbe of Munkach, Eastern Hungary, the Munkacher Rebbe, Rebbe Tzvi Hirsch Shapiro, also Tzvi Hirsch, and he asked a different question. He asked, can a golem be a shoichet, be a slaughterer, right? Before it's the minyan, now it's the slaughterer. And he says, Rabbi Ashkenazi, the Chacham Tzvi, he builds off that original ruling. He talks about how there's no prohibition to murder because of a technicality in the verse, ha'adam ba'adam, person from a person. He says, well, maybe that's just a technicality in terms of murder. But we could consider, listen to what he says, we could consider that there's this entity, there's this life that even though it's permissible to murder, but it still may be considered human life, that it could be a shochet, a slaughterer. Let's look at the laws of shchita. The ruling is in the Talmud and the Shulchan Aruch, we have categories of people who have some disabilities. For example, a cheresh, a deaf person, or an ilaim, a mute person. Okay? Can a deaf or a mute person, right? There's adjustments to the law for them simply because of what they are or are unable to do. Okay? We can't expect them to be able to, some of the laws just cannot apply to them because of their challenges. So, what about a shochet, a slaughterer? So the law is somebody who hears but cannot speak, the ilam, the mute, is allowed to be a shochet. Is allowed to be a slaughterer. Somebody who cannot hear or speak, we should try not to have them as slaughterers, because without hearing or you lose a lot of awareness. It's very difficult to be a proper slaughterer. But if somebody is watching over them and they did it and it was considered good, then it is a kosher slaughter as well. So he says, what's the golem different than the cheresh, the ilim, the deaf, the mute? It's somebody's watching over it. You could have this machine slaughtering for you and it should be kosher. He, however, concludes, no, the golem cannot be used for ritual slaughter, and the reason he gives, he brings a shalah, he brings other mystics, and he says, because this golem does not have a human soul. Now it gets into the soul. It may be very sophisticated, very advanced, but it doesn't have a soul. Think about that as and then we'll take questions after. All right, let's go one step further now. I want to develop these, but wait, let's go through a few more. Now, one more quote, and this is from the great Radziner Rebbe, Reb Gershon Chanoch Leiner. You may have heard of him. He was brilliant, not only in rabbinics, but he was a scientist. He was a doctor, famously known because he was in search to discover the blue dye of the chilazon fish that was used in the temple that should be used for tzitzit. He traveled to Rome. He traveled to the Naples Aquarium in Italy, and he discovered the cattlefish he claimed was the dye, and then other people argued with him. And now, he was famous. Still is famous. Well, he has the following question. We know when a human body dies, it imparts tumah, impurity, right? When you're alive, you have a soul, you're connected to God, that's purity. When the soul leaves the body is left without life, without connection to God, so it's impure. When a golem dies, does it impart impurity or not? That's his question. Because what is the golem? And he's very creative, and he says, well, we have something in the Mishnah, in the Talmud, about a species or a thing called Adnei Hasadeh. What is Adnei Hasadeh? Many opinions, but it sounds like that it's some kind of animal, but in a human form, but actually is connected by an umbilical cord to the earth. So it's human, animal, and plant. Okay? We're not sure what it is. Is it this? Or is it the Yeti? Or is it this? Or that, if you can see the picture, or there's even an opinion that it's actually the orangutan. Okay? But the point is that there are opinions where if they would die, whatever this would be, it would impart tumah because it has such a human-like appearance. Is that really true? Is that his conclusion? No. His conclusion is as follows. I'll tell you the reason why the golem is not considered a human, because we know that there are 4 categories of all of existence, the way God created the world. Okay, if you've learned Chassidut or some of Jewish philosophy, you know about this. The first category at the bottom is the domem, the mineral, inanimate world. This, the table, the chair, the earth, the stones, right? The next category above that, I've put it in this shaped triangle because it's got a larger amount of life, of God force in it, the plant world, the tzomeach. Above that is the chai, the animal kingdom, and above that is the humans. And what's the description, what's the name in Hebrew for humans? Medaber. What does medaber mean? Medaber means a speaker. Is that all humans are? We're just speakers? I hope we're less speakers and more other things. And we'll get to that in a moment. But he says, the human has to be a speaker. And because the golem could not speak, therefore, he concluded it's not considered a human, and therefore it can't impart tumah, and therefore it can't be a shochet, it can't be a slaughterer, and therefore it cannot join a minyan, etc., etc. By the way, just he raises an interesting question to think about. The Chacham Tzvi said, only if you're a human born from another human are you liable to death, right? What about Adam and Chava? Adam and Eve. They didn't have a mother, right? Would it be permissible to murder them? Chas v'shalom, right? Of course not. Okay. This is really interesting information, especially this last couple points about the soul and about the speaker. What is so important about speaking to humanity? Now, we find this in the narrative of the Torah. When the Torah talks about the creation of man, in Genesis, the Torah says, God formed man from the dust of the ground, and he breathed the soul of life through his nostrils, and man became nefesh chaya, a living soul. What does a living soul mean? So Onkelos, the famous Roman convert who translated the Torah into Aramaic, he says the living soul is the speaking spirit. That's what man is. Rashi, famous commentary, says also the same thing. He says cattle, beasts, they also have a soul, they're also alive, but humans were additionally given intelligence and speech. Why speech? And is there a connection between intelligence and speech? This is the point over here. What is so significant about speech, right? First of all, animals speak, right? Animals can speak. And more than just speech, what is speech? Speech is a form of communication. Animals communicate really well, sometimes much better than humans communicate. And if you think about it, speech is really something so external. For myself, on an island, living by myself, I don't need to speak. I speak because you're in the room and I want to communicate something to you. So my speech is not me, my speech is for you. Why would we label the human not as a sichli, as an intelligent person, or a nafshi, a soulful person, but as the medaber, as the speaking person? Right? We know sometimes speech is abused. Yeah, the husband, he tells his wife, he shows her, I just found the following study. It says that men only speak 15,000 words a day and women speak 30,000 words a day. You see, women speak too much. So the wife says, no, you don't understand. You know why women speak double the amount of words than men? Because they always have to repeat themselves. And the husband turns to his wife and he says, sorry, what did you say? According to spiritual wisdom of Jewish teachings, speech is very powerful. It's not just a skill, a capacity that begins in our mouths or in our throats or in our voice box, but it's in fact a tool, a power that we have that is rooted in the essence of your soul. Much higher, much deeper than your mind, your intelligence, your heart, your emotions, your feelings. I'm going to prove this to you. When you have a dilemma in your mind, right? You can't find the resolution. Speak it out to somebody. Now, sometimes you want to ask a mentor. I want to ask you a question about something I'm going through. You think you're seeking their advice or their resolution, yeah? As you're speaking, all of a sudden what happens sometimes? As I'm speaking to you, I got the answer. What happened over here? You know what your speech did? Your speech took you deeper into places that your mind couldn't go, and it strengthened, expanded your intellect. Emotions are the same way. Maybe men should listen to this more. Feelings, okay? Talk your feeling out and your feeling grows or becomes clarified. So you want to express love to somebody, don't be afraid. The more you say it, talk about it, it'll grow. It'll become even stronger than without the speech. Or if you're going through a negative emotion and you talk it out, you can bring resolution. You can calm it down. Because speech does things that our own internal mind and heart cannot accomplish. Speech, we know, can make us godlike. Okay, what does God do with speech? He creates. We also create. Think about this. If I, in the morning, met you and I gave you a nice, kind word, how beautiful you look, I'm so happy that you're here, it's so important. How do you feel for that day? I could change the universe, right? Chas v'shalom, if you give one nasty word to somebody, you can destroy somebody. We build and destroy through our words. Speech is more than that. Speech, actually, right, when God was talking about human becoming godlike because they ate from the tree of good and evil, and good and bad, so he says, humans have the ability to know good and evil. What does that mean? This essence of the soul that is the source of speech as we're defining the human is also the space where we can be truly human, which is the space where we get to have freedom. True freedom, moral intelligence. I'm going to call it moral intelligence and freedom of choice. Now think about this. A lot of people, a lot of things have intelligence, plants and animals, right? Only humans have moral intelligence to know right from wrong. And only humans have freedom of choice to make those decisions, either to make big mistakes or to make big correct decisions. Now we're tapping into what's uniquely human. Robots and humanoids are and are going to be brilliant, much cleverer than human beings. With all the data and all the knowledge, all the information already, go to your phone. I mean, Mr. Google, Rabbi Google can do a lot more than I can ever do, right? But they don't have moral intelligence nor the power of speech as we're defining. Animal speech is just speech that's from the mouth. It's a capacity, it's a tool of communication. Human speech is a tool for accessing your soul, where you're able to live freely and bring expansion to your mind, your heart, and everything else within you. We take speech sometimes very lightly, but imagine if you would really know the power of your speech and how you could use it to help yourself and help others. So, I'm going to throw out a couple things because we're short on time, and then we can talk further. But I want to flip the question the other way around. We are all concerned about how humanoids are becoming so human-like, and how's that going to play a role in human society? I think the challenge for humans nowadays is the other way around. Are humans just too much like robots and humanoids? And what do I mean? This humanoid, no matter how it gets its artificial intelligence, whether it was programmed and coded, or whether it's deep learning and it's learning to use what it received from its coder and programmer now to learn more, at the end of the day, is just a product of something external, a wiring, a coding, a programming, and even with growing with that, that's all it is. In essence, it never made a free choice in life. It was always influenced by something external. Now, I challenge myself and you all as humans. You have a lot of coding in you. You were born with a set of genes that you can't escape. Nurture, that's nature, and then there's nurture. You were given a set of parents, a family, a community, an education, a school. You were programmed. Is that the extent of your life? The way you feel, the way you view things, the way you think, the way you react, the way you deal, the way you think, is it all just based on how you were programmed? And then we got just, your life is one big pattern, one big predictable. So then, I would argue, we are behaving with artificial intelligence all the time. You know when you see patterns? I mean, we know in ourselves, this thing always triggers me. Okay, I'm always going to get angry and or discouraged. Why? Why? What about if you would choose otherwise? Oh, I can do that? Yes, you can do that. Right? Patients who have dealt with, people who have dealt with trauma and fears and insecurities, we don't believe that the human, with the human soul, is ever stuck in that. You're challenged by it, you have that coding in you, but you're not restricted to that. That's where humanity is truly expressed. I just read a story yesterday, a colleague of mine shared, beautiful story, that in the 1980s, I believe, there was a Chabad women's convention in Detroit, and it ended on Friday, and there were women from New York who had planned a Friday morning flight back to home, to be home for Shabbat. And they all came to the airport to get home to their families for Shabbat, and then the flight was canceled. And when it was going to be later, taking off 3-4 hours later, they realized they're not going to make it in time to their families for Shabbat. Now, this was a dilemma, right? They have children, they have husbands. So one of the ladies called the office of the Rebbe to speak to one of the secretaries and said, please tell the Rebbe, we are stuck here and we need help, a blessing, a miracle to get this plane out so we can return home to Shabbat to our families. So the secretary said, hold on, I'll go talk to the Rebbe. A minute later, he comes back to the phone and he says, I communicated everything you said to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says he doesn't understand what it means that you're stuck. So she said, we're stuck, we're trapped, we're caught, we're in a bind. I mean, it's a situation going on over here. So the secretary said, no. The Rebbe speaks a very fluent English. He knows what stuck means. He doesn't understand what it means that you are stuck. A Jew is never stuck. If this happened, figure out why it happened and what you can do with it. This was their message. It was a paradigm shift. Everything changed, and they said, well, we're here. Let's do something about it. And they started to go around the airport, finding Jewish people, Jewish women giving out Shabbat candles. I mean, they're already here. Do something about it. And the conclusion of the story is that there are Jewish women and girls today in this world who are lighting Shabbat candles every Friday because of their encounter with one of these women in the airport that Friday morning. A human, a Jew, is never stuck in anything. That is the only part of ourselves that is not artificial. That's the most genuine part of yourself. So we're going to conclude. I want you to think about this. Look at this scene over here. This is not exactly how it happened because nobody has any recollection, but this is the scene of Mount Sinai. And what do you see? You see, hopefully, God in heaven gave the Torah as a gift down to the humans here down below. Okay? And that's an important thing. You may recall the story when Moses went up to receive the Torah. There was a fight, a struggle. The angels wanted the Torah in heaven. And God said, no. I want to give the Torah to the humans. Now think about this. Angels would have done a much better job at observing and protecting and practicing the Torah. Angels are perfect. Humans, not so good. We make mistakes by accident or on purpose. We don't bring always as much honor as we should to the Torah. If God wanted a perfect observance of Torah, give it to the angels. And the Talmud tells us, Lo nitna haTorah malachi asharet, the Torah was deliberately not given to the angels simply because you're making a big mistake. God never asked you to be perfect. God asked you to be your best. I said before that Torah scroll from that robot would have been the most gorgeous, perfect Torah scroll. It's true. Whoever said that's a value? It's not a value. The value is the scribe, the human, given the role, the task from God to work hard. The only question you need to ask yourself is, have I done my best? I'll never be perfect. I was never asked to be perfect. I was asked to give it my all. And this theme plays out in Jewish law and Jewish thought in many places. It needs to be a shift in many of our thinking. We're striving for the wrong things. The robot and the humanoid will be perfect and humans will not be. And that does not diminish the role of the human. In fact, there's another really important role of the human. In the 1960s, there was a doctor who was speaking with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he says he wants to develop, at that time, a computer program to help treat the patients. And the Rebbe said, you can develop any program you want, but remember, there's certain things that are irreplaceable to you as a doctor. The human touch, the human bedside sensitivity. A machine, a humanoid, can never accomplish what you can accomplish. Are humanoids coming to take over the world? They'll take over a lot of things in the world, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. They can do all the dirty work. It's great, which gives us more time to be human. We're so programmed nowadays, we love to outsource things. My child's education, it's my mitzvah, right? I'll outsource it. I'll go pay a teacher, send them to camp. My child needs some babysitting, I'll outsource it. A babysitter, a screen, an iPad. I love to outsource my responsibilities, right? It's so easy nowadays. My wife's birthday and I couldn't be there, I'll ask her friends to spend time with her. Right? Outsource love. We outsource everything nowadays. Somebody calls me and they want to speak to me. I don't want to deal with it. I get my secretary in the office. You call her, you deal with it, and I'll follow up with you. We outsource everything. Now, it's not always a bad thing. It's not necessarily. Sometimes it's important because we need to create space and time for ourselves. It's true. But there are always going to be things in life that you just cannot and should not outsource because you, as the human, need to be there and need to do it. The computer will do a lot, the humanoid will do a lot, but not what you can do as a human. Remember that. Let's hope and pray that we have leaders in our world and in our technological industries that have wisdom and that use it right to develop these technologies into ways that benefit our lives, improve our lives. Yes, be ready because they're going to change our lives, but never forget you as a human and you as a Jew will never be replaced, and actually use the extra time you have right now with all this assistance to develop yourself further and to be the person, the human that Hashem wants you to be and created you to be. Thank you, my friends. Questions?